Welcome to the podcast, guys. New year, new podcast. Welcome to the podcast, guys. New year, new podcast.
New year, new me.
New year, new me. Today's episode is brought to you by Humans of New York. Subscribe to my channel, and you'll be entered to win this book if you're one of the first 100 subscribers, along with a few other things that will be added later.
Are they actually sponsoring you? Sorry, I didn't mean
Fuck no. So none of my sponsors are legit real sponsors. Like tomorrow I'll be like, sponsored by Creative Mornings, Vancouver. You know, just like whatever, just to shoot the shit. Story of the week relates to today's topic. Okay, yeah, so I was just literally making a bank transfer, right?
Yeah.
Regular draft. And
what do you mean you were making a transfer? You were transferring?
Like I was transferring funds from one of my bank accounts from one bank to another, right? Like
how many bank accounts do you have?
This is a new bank of mine that I'm transitioning to because they have better online services than my first bank, okay? I still have my first bank account. I'm not necessarily letting go right away, but I've got I've literally signed up with two banks, whatever. So she asked me how the services were and like how I'm liking everything, and I told her, and she's like, well, what do you like, what online transactions or whatever? I'm like, oh, like, you know, just like buying stuff online, like Amazon or filling my digital wallet. And she's like, digital wallet, what's that? And I'm like, oh, you know, like Bitcoin, cryptocurrency.
You just had to talk to her about crypto, didn't you?
I didn't have to. She asked, right? I don't even know. Like I was.
Yeah, but just because someone asks doesn't mean that you have to tell them.
Anyway, well, it wasn't a big deal. I'll tell you why. I'll tell you what happened.
You were like, you know, just using it to buy Ripple at the top.
No, dude. Like I was literally just explaining why that bank's services like outweighed the previous bank, and it was just because it was more convenient for online use. And when I said digital wallet, she asked what it was, and I explained to her, oh, I didn't go in detail. I'm just Bitcoin, cryptocurrency. And she like freezes and goes, I don't think you can have an account with us. Like blah, 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 blah. I'm like, what? Like, what's wrong with you? Like, what are you talking about? She's like, I think we have to close your account. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, I don't think this is right. And I'm like, can you just go get a manager? First, I thought she was joking. And then I realized she was being serious. So I'm like, can you go get a manager? Because I don't think you could tell me you're going to close my account simply because I told you what a digital wallet was. Or I said the word cryptocurrency or whatever. I don't even know if there's, like, laws beyond that or what. So she goes and talks to her manager, and I could see her from a distance. She's explaining this shit for like 2 minutes to her manager. Her manager even looks confused. So manager comes up to me, and she's like, oh, like, what's the problem, blah, blah. I guess she's trying to get my side. I'm like, I have no idea. I came here to deposit a draft, which I've done before, and she asked me how the services were. I said, good, because I like your online services. And then, you know, because I could use my digital wallet easily, like all that stuff. And she freaked out when I said cryptocurrency. And then, and she's like, oh, okay. And I'm like, she told me that there's a department that deals with this. I'm like, what, you guys have a cryptocurrency department or something? So I assume, like, in my head, now I'm transitioning, oh, maybe this girl thinks, like, it's fraud or something. Like, I don't know. But I'm assuming that she doesn't even know what's up, and she's a new teller. And then the manager tells her, she's like, okay, and she goes like this. She goes, okay, so-and-so, we won't use her name, but okay, so-and-so, you can go ahead and make this transaction. Like, she's shaking her head like, you better do this, right? Everything's okay. Do you feel comfortable doing that? And she's like shaking her head hard. And the girl's like, no. And then we just like
the girl who's working
the teller said no. And then because the machine is under her number, like every right, if you don't want to make my transaction, sure, you're being weird, that's fine. Like if you're uncomfortable, okay. The manager kind of like rolls her eyes slightly, looks at me. She's like, okay, sir, not a problem. We'll take you over here to this teller and they'll be happy to help you. The other teller helped me, no problem. I was out of there in no time. And the manager came up to me after the transaction. She like apologized and was like, yeah, I think like she just doesn't know or what's going on. So it was just like really weird, like that this bank teller was trying to close my account. It's like, you're a bank teller. You're not even fraud department. And I asked her, I'm like, do you even know like what they do there? And she's like, no, I just know we have a department for this. I'm like, okay, then let that department deal with it. I'm sure they have a system in place that if my account is, getting flagged or something, they'll look into that. You're a bank teller. You're here to just open funds for me, give me my money, take my money, whatever. So it's just funny and inconvenient. And that brings us to today's topic, which is Bitcoin and cryptocurrency.
I'm surprised that the manager would even give her an option.
Well, I think what it was the manager was kind of trying to make it buffer it down, and she was shaking her head make this transaction, it's okay. And she was saying it really slowly, and the girl was just no, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that's strange, because I was under the impression that banks were given a blanket sort of statement, or they were told that they're basically not to help anyone or anything that has to do with crypto. That's what somebody told me that knows help.
So I don't know. Maybe she just I wrote it on my Facebook the other day. I'm saying the word cryptocurrency in a bank is saying the word bomb at an airport, apparently. So I obviously am not going to be saying that word at the bank anymore, just to avoid anything. But I even told the manager, I'm if I ever come in here, I don't want to deal with that girl, because she just threatened to close my account for nothing,
Really?
And her manager had to come take care of that situation.
That's really
so it just
weird.
Doesn't make sense. Yeah, and I mean, it's not I'm avoiding the tax man or something, or I'm doing fraudulent stuff. You look at my account, it's got Amazon purchases and just regular bank transactions. So, and it's not even loaded with a ton of funds. I don't know where she was coming from, but
what have you been buying off Amazon?
Just Christmas gift. Christmas just ended, right? So I'm sure if you look through my history, it's all Christmas stuff. Amazon Prime, get that quick.
Do you buy basics off of that, toilet paper and shit?
No, but I hear that that's getting quite the hype with that Amazon button. We actually talked about it in one of the previous podcasts I did with the Basic Bros podcast, which is retired for now.
Right. Rest in peace. I think the only time I'll buy toilet paper off of Amazon is when there's a service where they can wipe my ass too. I'm waiting for that.
Word. Anyway, wipe your ass for that shit. Give me a break.
All right, you can cut that part out.
I will. Okay. Probably 100% I will. Okay, but today we're here to talk about cryptocurrency. We're here to talk about Bitcoin. And before we get into it, and before we get into who these gentlemen are, I'm going to tell you why we're even making this video. Obviously, I've been in crypto not for very long. The past year is how long I've been invested in it for.
Has it been that long?
For the past year and a half. Yeah. Since, it's January, right? So since January, essentially just before January last year, I guess. So
really,
half a year of research, I guess, right? And then, a year ago was when I made my first Bitcoin purchase, right? The small fraction, and then you see it grow and you're oh, it doubled, I got to get more of this. And then obviously more family members got involved. So anyway, and then obviously Zahid finds out that I'm into crypto, and I had heard a little bit about it through Zahid, but not, you don't talk about it much. Right?
Let me ask you a question though before we go on. What was our first crypto related discussion?
FOMO.
Yeah, but do you remember? FOMO. Yeah, but do you remember what exactly?
What do you mean? We talked about a lot of things. We went over charts that day. We went over websites.
No, I know, but I mean the first message that we talked about, it was about FOMO.
Oh, ICO, I think?
Yeah.
ICO? ICO. I was asking you about an ICO.
Right, and it was scammy. Yeah,
so we're going to talk about that. In fact, I got a couple messages, and this is why we're doing this, back to why we're doing this, is I've gotten a few messages about ICOs, and I've gotten messages from other people asking me about Bitcoin, so much so that literally every day I wake up, I literally got a list of people saying, yo, how do I buy Bitcoin? Hey, what is this Bitcoin stuff? Yada, yada, yada. And I see them in the predicament that I was in when I first spoke with you, Zahid, right? Mm-hmm. FOMO, fear of missing out, that kind of stuff. They really want to get into it quick, suddenly, and they don't know what the F they're doing. But that brings us to why we're actually doing this video, is because I'm tired of having to write emails and messages to people about Bitcoin. I'm literally just done. You can contact me if you really want more information, but I'm just going to refer people to this video. And I've written out an email brief that I made for people because it just became so extensive that I just emailed that to them. And I'm like, just read this stuff. Here's your basics. Here's some links. Just as a favor, right? And this doesn't give me any gain. You buying Bitcoin doesn't help Zahid, doesn't help Chris, doesn't help me. It's just for you, and the only reason why we're doing this is to give our experiences as far as what Bitcoin has done for us and how we feel about it.
You mean so we're not getting a percentage of all the people who buy because of this?
Well, that's up to them. If you buy Bitcoin as a result of this and make huge bank, please consider donating to Zahid, myself, or Chris. And you could do that in the form of Bitcoin as well, or Litecoin, or Ethereum. We'll take any form of payment. Buy us a Tesla, whatever you want.
You can post my address underneath this video.
I will. I will post all our wallet addresses under this video. Make sure you guys send me yours. And if you get value out of this, feel free to send us some Bitcoin or a fraction or a portion, or even some Satoshi. Who knows? Don't hate Zahid. But anyway, back to why these guys are here. So who are the people I'm with right now? Chris, I've never met you. That's okay. No. You're here for a reason, though, so you can explain why yourself.
Maybe for no reason, but we'll find out.
Exactly. But Zahid has been invested in Bitcoin, I would say, as an early adopter. And not only is he an early adopter investor, but he also is partnered in a Bitcoin ATM company. So Zahid comes into this from a multifaceted perspective. And the point of having Chris and Zahid, Chris, you're also an investor, correct?
Yeah, and I got in through Zahid about almost a year ago as well.
But Chris's story is actually pretty funny because, like, Chris and I are, like, have been pretty good friends for years. And, you know, I told a select few of my close friends about BTC back when I first started getting involved with it. The thing is that, like, despite always understanding the, you know, the technical implications of Bitcoin and, like, what it could do as far as the evolution of society, you know, and money in society, I kind of slept on it for a long time. I mean, I've known about Bitcoin for years and years. Like, basically, the first time I ever heard about it was when news stories started to come out about the Silk Road, which is probably
2012, 2011.
Yeah, like 2011. I remember the first time that I heard about Bitcoin, I remember looking at it and seeing that it was $11.
That's crazy.
Right. But the thing is that, like, you know, I just kind of slept on it and just kind of let it, you know, just pass me by. I was busy doing other things. Like, my priorities were different back then, you know, in life, sort of. So that's when I first heard about it. And, you know, when I finally decided to get involved, you know, I told a few other people, and Chris was actually one of them. And, you know, he didn't end up getting involved until about a year or two later, maybe about a year and a half.
No, it was about 3 or 4 months later. But that's
was it
double.
No, it was longer than that, wasn't it?
Well, it's funny because I was living in Taiwan last winter, and you can buy Bitcoin at a Family Mart ATM.
Yeah.
And there was one below my house.
Yeah.
And I didn't do it.
There's a crazy amount of, like, Bitcoin ATMs in Taipei for some reason.
Yeah.
I believe it. You always say, like, we see it when we look at the markets, even when the Asian market is, like, effing around, you know, things tank or things skyrocket really suddenly. So it's interesting, I think, in my opinion, how invested the Asian market is, as even opposed to the Western market. Now, I don't know numbers, I don't know figures, so I don't know if the Western market dominates or the Asian market does, but in my opinion, and based on my conversations with you, it seems like Asian markets have really adopted crypto.
From what I understand, it was like China who was leading the way at first, and then I guess they've basically, you know, their involvement has now been limited by the government. And then after that, because I remember, like, when at least when I was involved with Bitcoin, the first major China FUD that I remember was when Bitcoin went from 3,000 down to about 1,800. You were involved at that point, right, Chris?
That's in July.
Yeah, that was like not even, it was like not even 6 months ago.
And then the September correction as well was caused by Chinese government.
Yeah, shutting down exchanges and stuff like that, yeah. But anyway, so then they basically got priced out of the Bitcoin price because a lot of people, I know that there was a lot of like people thinking like, oh, if China's like gets banned, then the price is going down because they control so much of the market. But then after they did, it seems like the North American markets and European markets just picked up the pace and started to take the lead. And then I think after that is when Japan and Korea started getting heavily involved, and we started seeing stories about places like BitCamera in Tokyo accepting Bitcoin and being able to pay for your plane ticket with Peach Airlines with Bitcoin in Japan. And I think now they've just gone completely apeshit.
Now the news story this year was just maybe jumping ahead, but in China and Korea, there's sort of like a nationalist kind of turn in the way that they're handling digital currencies, like Neo and the Neo ecosystem.
Yeah, exactly. So what's cool is that basically what they've done is they've tried to basically shut down Bitcoin from our limited understanding. The thing is that our involvement with the space is, we're mostly investors and traders and understand the technical aspects of what these different basically startups are trying to do. But, I wouldn't consider myself to be the most technical guy as far as I understand the technology, but, I'm not as hardcore as some people are. But it seems like what China has done is that they've basically, tried to crush down, they basically tried to control people's involvement within, in cryptocurrency. And then it seems like what they're going to do in its place is kind of foster their own homegrown cryptocurrencies. Do you know what I mean?
Okay.
Like Neo, for example. And Chris had a pretty good analogy earlier about what was it?
Well, we were talking earlier because
you probably want to look at that, eh?
I will look at that. That's the sound. But I worked previously in Beijing, and I worked for tech companies for a while. And I kind of saw this pattern of, for example, Line, the Japanese messenger app, was getting quite popular in China, and then it was blocked, which allowed WeChat, a Chinese competitor, to take lead in the market. And then Uber also was crushed by a local competitor called ETHOS, which it all happened really quickly, and it was because the government and business is so intertwined. And so, if the political situation changes, it's like a authoritarian state. So, essentially, it makes sense what's happening now. And I think one of the things we were talking about is Neo, this currency, which is going to do a lot of big things this year. And they have their own exchange coming.
Yeah, there's we were just basically looking at a graph, it's an outline of the Neo smart economy. It's just something that I saw on Twitter. Are you on Twitter, by the way, Mahyar?
Yeah. Mahyar Saeedi, @Mahyar Saeedi, all one word.
All right.
I'll put the link in the description below, and I think it's on my YouTube channel anyway. So
I'm not going to follow you, but
fine, don't. I don't follow you anyway.
But anyways, Twitter, I basically just got on it recently after years of just seeing it as being some sort of way that people tweet at celebrities or something like that. But as it turns out, it's turned into this one of the greatest resources for crypto information, that and Reddit, I guess. I used to use the Bitcoin talk forums, but if you follow the right people on Twitter, it's you can get. It's crazy just how instant everything is. Like, you know what I mean?
Totally.
Like, you just, it's like, I'm becoming diseased by just keeping it open all day, just having to check. I mean, you can follow people who are basically like investors and day traders making bullish calls and, bearish calls to like news and, FUD and whatever. It's like just all there right in front of you. So,
and an influx of YouTube videos, like millions of YouTube videos. And I'm talking people like you and me that are making videos and making predictions for like Definitely. The same thing, kind of like the Reddit articles that you see, kind of like the Twitters that you see. So when you see it this mainstream in your social media, you better bet your ass that this shit's taken off, whether you want it to be there or not, or whether you think it's a hype or whatever. I think once it's like part of a global community, right? Like it's done, like it's there.
Yeah. The thing is that like, I mean, I guess like one thing that Chris and I has talked about is that like we basically experience, or you too, like you experience the like, the .com bubble and rise of the internet. Like, I mean, I remember a time before there was internet, when we were in like grade 7 or 8, there was no internet. Like I remember I got my first modem and I think it was grade 9. So I was probably about like 12 or 13. But I mean, you see how quickly like the adoption came. And
totally.
I mean, I went from using a 14.4 modem to like, cable or whatever it was at the time within like years. And the thing is that I was like, since we were so young as kids, I mean, we were almost too young to sort of understand what it was that was happening at the time. Do you know what I mean? But I also feel like generally when it comes to things like this, people kind of like, because we have like so much stimulus from like so many different areas that it's kind of, sometimes you just need to like sit back and like kind of check yourself as to what's going on. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like totally. I have a friend of mine, for example, who's an investor in Samsung, and this guy made a killing on Samsung stock. And, one time we were having a conversation and I was like, man, like, how did you, I was like, how did you like know? Or, I just made some sort of comment like that, like, oh, how did you know to get in? And he's like, he was like, dude, like, look at your phone. Like, you're basically holding like a computer in your hand. And at any point over the last 5 years, you could have just looked at your cell phone and been like, this is good. This shit's going to be huge. Like 5 years ago, nobody had a smartphone and now everybody has one, so things.
And I think with Bitcoin, where it comes down to it is like, it sounds complicated. Oh, what's a blockchain? Oh, what's a Bitcoin? What is this fake, like cloud money, like this online currency? Or like, I don't know. I hear a lot of like questions that are so simple. It's like, well, what is Google, dude? Why don't you just type that shit into Google? Like, spend 10 minutes of your time. Just type in. But people, in my opinion, are just like, the ones that catch on late are just lazy. They think it's too complicated to understand. It's beyond what they know. So they're uncomfortable. What's the point? It's a bit of laziness that I see. And I was lazy too.
Definitely.
First time I heard of Bitcoin, it was like, oh, yeah, no, I don't know. Cryptocurrency? What? So this money's like on the, what? What do you mean internet money? Like, so yeah, I didn't look into it either to start up with. But then as things started to build and I started to see it catch on, I started to keep an eye on it. And then I realized, I'm like, oh, well, what will it hurt if I just put in some money into this and just see what happens? Like, I know people have made good because this thing was super low. Now it's high, but it's supposed to go nuts. And that's when I made my first investment. It kind of went on for a bit. It grew, and then I got a few more people in on it, and it just skyrocketed. And then after that, it was kind of like, okay, what's next? Altcoins? Okay. Ether? Okay. And for me, it grew like that.
Yeah. The thing is that like these people who are like skeptical about like, magic internet money and like all this shit, it's like, to be honest with you, that's somewhat of a valid concern and question. You know what I mean? Because like just, we're all looking at right now, we're looking at pretty much like the biggest altcoin rally that I've ever seen, where we've seen like Ethereum go from like what, $150 to 1,400, Litecoin go from $20 to $250. Even we were talking about
forks with Bitcoin Cash, Bitcoin Gold, and Ethereum fork that's happening. So this,
Yeah, exactly. But the thing is that like we were just talking about how most of these coins, like they have no real world application, and like they don't do anything. Like it's vaporware, most of them. And like we were talking about like
they're copies of one another.
Yeah, like all these new altcoins that are coming out, like
Tron.
Like Tron, and we were looking at Icon and Power, and just these new ones that are, especially the ones that are trading on Binance, which are the ones that we've been into lately because it's like the place to be right now if you're a trader.
And but Binance is a Chinese exchange.
Yeah. We'll talk about exchanges later.
Yeah, we will. But
we're going to mention some exchanges and what we recommend, like if you want to get started into Bitcoin in a bit. But yeah, continue.
But yeah, so we were looking at like, on coinmarketcap.com, which is basically the reference point for, numbers, how basically all of these altcoins, the websites are just like copies of each other. Like everyone's the same layout. But I'm not talking about like, here's my GeoCities page of like, hot guys or whatever. It's like these coins have like $300-400 million market caps.
Yeah.
So it's like there's $400 million of people's money into some like shit coin, and like no one knows what it does.
Won't exist in 1 year.
Yeah, it likely won't exist in 1 year, and it's just this thing's like pumped to heaven. Like it's scary and also exciting.
So let's talk about that aspect real quick. How does a crypto coin just disappear? Like, okay, there's 400 million in one coin, and you guys say next year that coin's like gone. So what the happens? Do we know? Do we just think it's like one large investor that pulls out and then everybody else pulls out? Because the way I see it, Bitcoin, in my mind, for example, can't go back to zero. In my mind, there's way too much volume. Everybody would have to sell every single Bitcoin for Bitcoin to go down to zero, and there would have to be no trades, correct?
Yeah, I mean, it's the same way that a business
So with these other crypto coins that people don't understand is they're actually like smaller entities that are kind of like companies. They all do different things. Like those cryptocurrencies back different actual almost service or product in a sense, right? The blockchain is used for a purpose, right? It's the
they all have different purposes.
Yeah. So what happens is essentially the company folds.
Yeah,
that's the only way. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, so the price is zero. I mean, like there's like some sort of website called like Altcoin Graveyard or something, and it's like it might be a thread on Bitcoin Talk, but it's basically a list of all the coins that have existed since 2011 that have gone to zero, that no longer exist.
Do we know roughly how many coins that are on that list? Have you?
It's a lot.
Okay, I'll add the link to that. Send it to me, and I'll post it in the description below, so people could check that out. So you still want to be careful with cryptocurrency, obviously. As you say, Zahid, all the time, you can get burned on crypto. It's not that you can't. And I think most of that honestly happens with the fear of missing out or not knowing what you're buying. I constantly, as I said, I get calls all day. One guy called me twice today, just a friend, asking about an altcoin that got pumped 30% that he wanted to buy.
Which one was it?
I got to go look on my sheet. It's like, it was one of, VEN.
Oh, yeah.
It got pumped, right? And it's a good coin, I'm all about it. But I told him, I'm like, well, don't buy it right now because it just shot up. I'm like, it's going to at least dip a bit before it goes back up. Plus, you don't want to buy at a high and then have it like drop, like what if it's a pump and dump? So I just told him to like hold off a bit, but maybe like buy it within the day. The same person called me about Ripple. This was like when it was pumping last week, was it? Right?
Mm-hmm.
And I told him not to buy it because it was already at $3, right? He didn't listen. I bought it at $3. I'm not going to lie. I bought it at $3, but it was already at 3. He wanted to buy and it was going higher. I'm like, this shit's going to tank. Don't buy it. And my point was I was going to sell it past 330 or 340. And I think it just went up and then dropped like suddenly and I missed it. So I still have my Ripple holding on to it, but I told him not to buy it. He bought it and he got burned, right? Now he's waiting and he bought even higher than me. So he needs to let this coin get back to where it was and then some just to get his money back. And at that point, you're in a waiting game. So
yeah, it's called bag holding.
Yeah, there you go.
So the thing is that like when I went to visit Chris when he was living in Taipei last March or April of 2017, and I remember I was trading Ripple on Poloniex when it was doing its run from 1 cent to 20 cents. So that was when Ripple did its first like massive, like, you know, it had a huge run. Mm-hmm. And I remember at the time the volume on it was just insane. And like at that time I was trading on Poloniex only. So I remember Poloniex was like crashing and like people had buys on and people were trading on margin and like they couldn't access the site. And, you know, the site went down and then when it came back up, like a bunch of people had found that they got liquidated because when the Poloniex crashed, you know, that affected the volume and the price tanked, you know, so, and then basically after that huge run, Ripple, I don't even remember what the price high was back then.
Didn't do a whole lot for.
Did it make it up to 2?
No, it wasn't even close to that. It was,
30 cents. It was I remember it went really quick on the cents. Like it rose between 20 to 30 and just kept jumping to 60 really, really fast in like one week or a few days. Because I was following it then and I was like, whoa, what's this? But it was new, right? Same thing. I didn't buy Ripple that early because, skeptical.
But yeah, but anyway, so basically after it hit that peak, it sold off and it, you know, it like consolidated for about like, was like 7 months or something like that. And then eventually started going back up and then it just exploded like from whatever 26 cents to, you know, whatever $3.50, which is just like an insane gain. I mean, yeah.
And I mean, now it's like a few days later, it's sitting at $1.90 or something. So it dropped about $1.10 within a couple days. So that leads us to volatility. Because the number one thing I hear from people who aren't invested in Bitcoin is it's too volatile, man. It's too volatile. It's risky. But what they don't understand is if you're smart about it, you could actually play off that volatility. You could double up. Like with Bitcoin, for example, if I buy it at 10K and it goes up to 17K and I take the shot thinking that it might drop, I would sell at 17, it would drop back to 12, I could buy it back at 12 and sell again, let's say it goes up to 20, which I actually did multiple times. I've doubled up on Bitcoin as it's fluctuated when it was going crazy before Christmas. Now we're seeing Bitcoin kind of go sideways, right? It's hovering between roughly between like 13,000 to like 17,000, dropping between 15. And it's been doing that for a while. I actually didn't see Bitcoin doing this for this long, and it's probably going to continue for the rest of the month, I predict. But yeah, to me, it's like the volatility is good. I want something that can increase in value 30%. And the reason for that is that I'm going to do the research of that coin in order to know whether it's going to be a smart purchase. Just like you would with a stock, just like you would with maybe your RSP or mutual fund. But I laugh at people, and I don't mean to, and I don't mean to be rude if you have one, but I don't believe an RSP or mutual fund is your best bet. I don't know how much money you could get out of that in a short-term period of time that you can't risk to take some cryptocurrency and make that money. In fact, one person I know literally went to the bank this week and took out their RRSP. They're like, I just made $5,000 in RRSP, which is nothing. And they're like, I made that much like in less than a couple months of just trading easy cryptocurrency. So
right. Well, The thing is that like most people, like what you have to understand is that like, most people when they look to investment are basically looking at traditional like financial instruments, and they're wanting a guaranteed return, right? So, if you put your money into the stock market, I think it's like, I don't even know like what, I don't trade in the stock market, but I think a good year is if you make like a 5% gain or something like that.
Yeah,
like just ridiculous. To put things into perspective, like, there's like some day, I think it's like Black Monday, which is like
1987.
Yeah, 1987, the stock markets crashed. And that crash, which is basically a historical event, was 20% in the stock market. So, yeah, it dropped 20%. So the stock market dropped 20% in one day, which in cryptocurrency is like a joke. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
exactly.
Yeah. So the stock market is like more of a like, reliable, like because there's so much liquidity, like it's, like the price swings are like less frequent, and it's people get emotional about money, man. Like that's all there is to it, really. And I mean, I'm a when I got involved with crypto, I had no idea the type of shit that we would see. You know what I mean? And I found myself in vulnerable spots emotionally because of crazy price swings, and
I was asked once, do you think Bitcoin will hit $5,000? When I was like, this was when I had first purchased my Bitcoin, which was around like 25 for the first one, but I didn't buy much, right? But that was the first time I'd made my purchase, and I said, no, it'll probably hit about $5,000. Then as things started to get more volatile and crazy, and I looked at like things like the market cap, the volume and stuff, I'm like, yo, no. This thing's definitely going past 5,000. And you read up more and more, and people are like, oh, it's going to hit 10,000 by the end of the year. By the end of the year, it had hit a high of 24,500, something like that. Before
you're talking about Canadian.
Am I? Maybe. US dollars, let's just say 20,000. Let's just say $20,000. So
it did hit 20. It was like 19 something.
19.5, almost 20, whatever. Let's just round up for the sake of argument. Which is crazy. It's $9,000 more than even the experts were predicting, right?
It was a crazy, insane run that even us as being people who have been like involved with Bitcoin for years were like, Jesus Christ. Like, when things were at 11 or 12,000 at that point, the price was already parabolic. So, that's when we sort of started like, taking some profit off the table. But, then just watched it double over the next week. So
totally.
It's
go ahead.
No, I was just going to say it's totally unpredictable. And I mean, we underestimated the global FOMO and like, it's extremely emotional, like market. Do you know what I mean? Speculative and extremely emotional. So it's like we're doing crazy things. It's the biggest financial bubble of our lifetimes that we'll ever see, probably.
Definitely. And I mean, I gotta say, like, Zahid, you predicted this. When it was at a rise, it was at a high, you predicted, you told me, you're like, it's gonna dump hard. And you even said it's gonna go down potentially to 8,000 US. You were not off by much. You were off by $2,000. It could
still go to 8,000.
It's still going, yeah. But I mean, in that one drop that you predicted quite
50%.
Close.
Yeah, it dropped 50%.
Yeah, which is crazy bad if you bought at a high, and people should understand that exactly the FOMOs were buying high because they thought it was just going to continue. They don't know how to read charts. I didn't know how to read charts, right? Like, I'm just starting to actually adapt to that, and I'm trying to help people who are getting into Bitcoin to learn that as well, like as they go. But yeah, when things go parabolic, you kind of got to either pull out or just be smart enough not to put in until a dump. But it was crazy, and I'm thankful that I listened to you, because otherwise I would have probably left my money in there, watch it grow, and then watch it tank, and then not have made $1. You know what I mean? Or like half my money that I would have made would have been lost. Right?
The thing is that like sorry, go ahead.
I just mean, like, in the short term, in the past, I've sold like completely out of a position because I thought it was the top, and again, it's 13,000 looked like an insane top, and then it went to 17 or 18,000.
So you bought back in? Did you buy back in at a higher price?
I actually went into alts, and that worked out. But it's really difficult to time the top.
Yeah, you can't pick the top, so it's like...
You can pick resistance historically, but often it defies it, or certain coins, like Bitcoin.
Yeah. But I mean, you could even tell, you can't predict the top, but you could tell that it was parabolic. You could tell that it was not sustainable, essentially, right? Like you can look at that chart on the yearly or on the daily, and you could look at that spike and you could say, this is not going to last for very long, because what goes up eventually must come down for sure. And by the way, Zahid explained it to me. He's like, it's going to happen sooner than later. This is just too much of a pump that's happening too quickly. And he was right. And sure enough, it did drop. But that brings us to, what the fuck should people do? Should people who don't have Bitcoin buy Bitcoin? Or should people that just want to learn, the ones who really want to get in it, kind of like we're in it, or you've been in it, Zahid, is it just for someone like that who's an investor, or a trader? Because I feel like it kind of goes both ways. I'm not a trader by any means. I don't think any of us have a background in finance, do we? Or accounting?
I studied basic economics in university, and I have some experience with trading the stock market in the past.
Yeah. But other than that, none of us are actually we didn't go to school for finance, for example.
No, but it doesn't even matter. The thing is,
exactly.
Since I'm involved in cryptocurrency, since 2013, 2014, I now get guys, from Goldman Sachs calling me, asking me for advice about cryptocurrency, and because it's just investing with it is so much different than the traditional forms of investing, and these guys went to Harvard Business School, so it doesn't really matter. It's almost like it's kind of like a decentralized form of investing, to ironically or not, because that's the concept behind crypto, and now basically it turns everyone into their own bank, and some people want that and some people don't, so.
Yeah, it's insane. But that point being made is that, I'm not a trader, I'm not a broker, I didn't invest in stocks super early on, maybe some gold and that's about it. But now, in comparison to where I was a year ago, holy crap. It's completely changed, A, my life, B, what I do. I actually now am trading for other people who, they want in on this, but they don't know where to start, and they are too afraid, just like you said, emotions. Mm-hmm. Their emotions get in the way, and they have FOMO, or they're just looking at the screen all day, and they're just, freaking out. They don't know the moves to make. Whereas, once you get a grasp of it, you kind of roll with it. And I've been fortunate enough not to get any losses and to be able to help other people out. And Zahid, you've obviously helped me out a bunch, and we kind of tether information that way. But yeah, I find that this is kind of one of those things that anybody can get into. You know what I mean? Whereas I feel with stocks, it's a bit more elaborate in the sense that your percentages aren't as high. You really need to dig into corporate stuff and the company research and what you're backing and this and that. But here, you talk about all the time, the people who come to the Bitcoin ATMs, for example, or the people that you help is so vast as far as, for example, what they do for a living, their age, their income even. Yeah. I know people who have invested into cryptocurrencies that are students that have literally thrown $200. I know people who are high rollers who have done well above that 50K mark, throwing into cryptocurrencies. I'm sure you both have seen the same sort of thing. So for me, that's a telltale sign that this is kind of here to stay. The internet was embraced by everybody as a whole. Cryptocurrency is being embraced by wide spectrum of people.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree
as a whole.
Yeah. And what it is it's people just call me, whether they be, bankers to construction workers or plumbers or students, today I had some guy who called me with his mom because she wanted to get involved. And, part of me wonders, why that is. And I don't think that, I think that there's definitely a lot of people who think that they're just going to get in and get rich quick. But I honestly think that it's more than that, because for me, being involved with crypto and trading is about more than just money. You know what I mean? And if you really look at it, it's it's nice to make to make money, but it's not just about the dollars.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I find people calling me and, my phone is ringing all day. And basically when I pick it up,
oh my God, yeah.
There's people who they don't even really want anything. They just want to talk about what's happening, and they just want to hear about it and talk about the implications, that it's going to have on society and what the future is going to be like and stuff. And it's cool, because it's seems like it's, as far as the way that technology is evolving and progressing, it seems like the next step in the evolution of society in a way. Mm-hmm. And it also, I think that makes a lot of people you're a part of something that's bigger than yourself. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. And
yeah.
Going back to the whole bank thing, banks hating on it, and you hear, on things like, for example, Business Insider or whatever, there's people who knock it who are actually CEOs of banks, for example.
Yeah. Did you see the headlines today where that was about Goldman Sachs going back on?
Yeah, right? Okay,
So Jamie Dimon, he called it a fraud. And then basically when Bitcoin crashed, it dumped a few weeks later, the rumor is, or I don't know if this is confirmed or not, but that they were buying millions of dollars worth. And then today they put out an
exact same thing. They were knocking it, and they owned a large portion of Bitcoin. So these banks that are telling you not to buy Bitcoin are buying Bitcoin. Do you not see how that's a little weird, people? Do you not think that maybe these banks want the Bitcoin and the cryptocurrency market all to themselves, so that they can later on, when the market does get regulated, they can then sell them to you as mutual funds or stocks or whatever the hell through their own packages or what it may be? It's just ridiculous, because you hear it all the time. It's one of the arguments I hear most often is, the banks hate it, the banks are against it, it's corrupt. I'm really? You want corruption? You want to hear about corruption? Why don't you go look and see how much JP Chase has in Bitcoin? Why don't you go find out how much Goldman Sachs is invested? Why don't you find out why so-and-so last year said crypto was crap, but they were buying it up like a mofo?
Yeah, there's two. So I'd say there's a historical precedent from 100 years ago during the robber baron era, where investors would accumulate, and then they would take out newspaper articles telling the public to buy certain stocks, and then inflate the cost or inflate the price, and then they dump their stocks. And I don't think, but there's something interesting happening here, because there's a lot of early accumulation of Bitcoin. I don't know if we were talking about this, but basically, because now the institutional investors are buying it at a high price relative to early adopters. So I don't know what the parity is going to be like in the future, in terms of who's holding more power in terms of manipulating price.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, we only right now see a portion of a full pie that's actually been purchased of Bitcoin anyway, right?
What do you mean?
It's still got a long way. For every single Bitcoin to be purchased, it still has a long way to go.
And then every Bitcoin. I mean, there's a statistic of how many are lost and will never be recovered. And then there's also the Bitcoins that belong to like Satoshi Nakamoto's Genesis block Bitcoins, which is he has 1 million Bitcoins,
which is a large portion right now, right?
Yeah.
There's about 70 million.
Yeah. They'll only ever be 21. Yeah.
So now take that and be okay, for now, if let's say he were to pull all that out, Bitcoin would drop. You would see a dent, obviously, in the chart.
If he's still alive.
If he's still alive. And if he pulls it all out. But the point being is, as Bitcoins accumulate, as Bitcoin grows, as more and more get bought, less and less of those big chunks of pie that get pulled out are going to make a bigger dent in the volatility.
Yeah, exactly. So you're talking about liquidity. So the thing is that
exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
So right now, the liquidity of the entire crypto market is worth, as of this moment, $728 billion, of which Bitcoin has 247 billion of that market share. And the thing is that, like, if we compare this, which is basically essentially a financial sector now, and you compare it to the market cap of a company like Apple, Apple's market cap, I think, is just past like 1 trillion, right? So the entire cryptocurrency, market is worth less than Apple. So as, more and more money gets put into cryptocurrency, obviously bigger sells will have less of an impact on the, on the price, and the swings it'll become less volatile.
Yeah, which brings me into the whole volatility aspect of people asking, why is it so volatile? That's the number one question I get all the time. And that's the best way to describe the volatility, is it's still a baby. It's trying to work its way up to be quite honest, I'm hearing predictions of over $100,000 per Bitcoin, which I actually think at this point is friggin' reasonable.
Yeah, I would say that's fair.
is that's what's going to happen. And people laughed at me when I said 5,000. People laughed at me when I said 10. People laughed at me when I said 20. Whatever.
Now you're going to get your revenge?
Yeah, I know. But I can't say I told you so, but no. But the whole point is, it's working its way to $100,000. Let's just assume it is. If you're going to get to $100,000 and you're worth 10, you're going to be jumping around a lot along the way. But as you grow to the top, that volatility you're going to see is going to go from a few $1,000 drops to maybe like a few $100 drops, And I think it'll always be at least a few hundred that it could drop or go up in a day once it reaches the top. But I don't think you're going to see big drops like a 10K dump hard when it's at $100,000.
We're looking at the Berkshire Hathaway stock price as a reference.
Right. But I mean, I think that like seeing a 10K dump when it's 100 grand is like, that's only 10%. So
exactly.
That might happen. I mean, I don't know. But the thing is that like, I also think, so I think that I haven't really studied this, but I think that the market cap being so low has a lot to do with the volatility, but also that the real world adoption is so low still that the market is like, it's very speculative and it's like highly emotional, which means that like any news story, FUD or hype affects the price ridiculously. Even if those news events are completely meaningless because people are just buying and selling based off of emotion and speculation.
Yeah.
So like
the number one example of that are YouTube shills. So people who are YouTubers who talk about crypto, just like we are right now almost, but these guys they do it professionally. They have a channel dedicated to crypto. Some of them will do picks of the month or picks of the year, and we'll actually do it at the end of this podcast. We'll make our picks of the year for you guys if you guys get invested. Not to say that they'll go up, but we'll just pick a few to see what happens. And they'll pump up a coin. They'll be like, oh yeah, like this coin's going to go up. And a bunch of people will buy it, but it'll just be hype and nothing will happen. And then they lose their money too. So there's shills out there too. Not to say there aren't people out there who do predict right and do make wise decisions. I think you just got to be really careful about who you're listening to if and when you do buy your altcoins or cryptocurrency. Whatever.
The thing is that in this unregulated industry, everybody's trying to steal your money, and everyone's trying to get as rich as possible. So we know that there's like pump and dump groups and, people who are trying to sell you their bags at the top.
Wall Street wanting to short.
Yeah, I mean, but that's not necessarily like,
a huge hit.
No, I mean, it's not like malicious. They're not doing it maliciously. They're just market. But I mean, if someone's there's these like trading groups, like tons of them on Telegram and Slack and stuff, where people actually pay to get into them and get tips on the next coin that's going to moon. They just they're just pumping up groups. So there's a lot of shady shit out there, and the security is really important. Going back to what we were talking about before, that ICO that you were that was
let's not mention the name of it because
I don't even remember. What was it?
Because one of our friends is actually invested in it. However, I will say this much. They have been getting money out of it. They've been regularly getting money out of it. They've made more than they put in. So they did well, but that ICO in particular is having some issues right now at the moment in Canada and the US. But they're still, from what I understand, making money. But I'm not part of it. I don't know. I was actually thinking of having that individual on this podcast as well, but I thought we would get way too into ICOs and it would get too complicated. So maybe I'll save that for another podcast. He would be a great reference because he is very much P2P network type of person. So yeah, but yeah, ICOs. Back to your point, Zahid. Tell us why we shouldn't get involved in them.
No, I'm not saying you can't get involved with them. I mean, I know people who have gotten involved with ICOs and have had major gains, and there's definitely a lot of good projects, out there. But, you got to be careful about ones like that. Like a lot of people are trying to take your money, so.
Totally.
Yeah, just important to play safe.
The way I saw it was if it kind of looked like a pyramid scheme, just don't do it, What do you think of, for example, BitConnect?
I don't know anything about it, but I think that's it's like a Ponzi essentially. I think.
Yeah,
I don't know that much about it, but that's what I've heard.
We've talked about lending and hedging before, and BitConnect apparently you can lend your Bitcoin out, and they give you a portion of the profit or whatever it may be. So people are making
that on
money.
An exchange. You can do that on Bitcoin.
Yeah. So what is different about BitConnect? You know what I mean? Is it just like the fact that they have a referral program that makes it different? Like, what's the hype between this BitConnect shit that I keep hearing about that all these noobs are telling me?
Well, what a Ponzi scheme is that early investors get paid out with later investors, with the money that they're putting in, right? So, I don't know exactly what it is that they're doing, but if you put into BitConnect earlier. I mean, I've had a couple people try and sell me on BitConnect, and I don't know. I'm just not really that interested in I've got too much on my plate already.
Exactly.
Yeah, but there's definitely some good ICOs coming out this year, and I think that I might try and get involved with some of my first ones.
Nice.
But there's a lot of. I mean, what an ICO is they're basically offering you. It's like an IPO, so they offer you early shares or coins. If you invest money into their startup, and there's no guarantee that that's even going to go anywhere, Yeah.
So, well, as I say, it's kind of like you're investing in, a brand new startup or a brand new company. It's almost like you don't know. You never know whether it's going to launch or not. But if it looks shady, it smells shady, it sounds too good to be true, unless it's Bitcoin, it probably is.
I mean, all I can say is just do your research,
Yeah, I think that's key. I think people need to talk to people who are involved in cryptocurrency, just like I have. And I have people come to me. I have no problem, sharing my experiences with you guys. I have no problem telling you, if you need to find a platform, and we're going to talk about that next, or how to exchange Bitcoin, how to trade. I have no problem doing that, and that does nothing for me. Me taking time out of my day to have a phone conversation with you or meet up with you at a coffee shop, just explain Bitcoin to you, I'd be more than happy to do those kinds of things because I feel like a lot of people can benefit off this. But if you lose your money or whatever, understand that's on you and the decisions you make. I can only vouch for my experience. And I'm sure there are people out there who have had sour experiences. But from what I understand and from my experience, they've brought it on themselves, meaning they've played the market incorrectly. They made poor choices. They had FOMO, fear of missing out. They got screwed. They lost their wallet address, for example, just noob mistakes,
Right.
And the other thing that I find entertaining more than anything is and this goes back to me, I'll help anybody, is the fact that I've had people text me being like, you're crazy, like without even saying hi, nothing. I have like the message. You're crazy. Zahid, put your phone away. We're on a fucking podcast.
Sorry.
What's the rules of the podcast, Zahid?
I'm just getting trade alerts. I'm losing money because of you.
Well, why don't you can trade while I tell this portion, I guess.
No, I can't because I stopped listening to you immediately. Sorry.
Who are you, Joseph Chan?
Oh you'd have to cut that part out.
Why? He's cool. I love him. He's my bro. Anyway.
Well,
no, it's...
thing is that people do their research. But when I got into it as well, I was sort of just eyeing these altcoins that would do these 100%, 200% gains. Mm-hmm. And then I was just Bitcoin as the most boring thing ever. Because it was going up 1% a day, down 0.5%. But,
yeah, and then it's like, what's the point? What's the point of that? And I don't get it. I'm like, if I'm investing in something, I want mad return and I want it fast or even within the year or whatever it may be. So the next thing I'd really like to get into is platforms, because people always ask me like, how do I buy a Bitcoin? Or, you know, like, I can't buy it at the bank. Like, what do I got to do? Mm-hmm. So we're going to get into that right now. But there's a little bit of a issue. A lot of the trading platforms that are major ones, that are big players, have stopped taking new users and new subscribers because there was a lot of hype the past month. A few of them being Bittrex, Bitfinex, and Binance. However, Binance just announced the other day that they're allowing a small portion of new users every day. So if you're looking into using platforms for trading altcoins, at least, Zahid recommended Binance to me, and I find it to be great. I recommend Binance. But if you're if you're new to trading, I also highly recommend, and I know Zahid hates Quadriga. I do not. I think for new users, for people who are just getting into Bitcoin and altcoin trading, a platform like Quadriga or something similar to that would serve you well. And it's a shame that Bittrex, for example, stopped signups, because they, in my opinion, had a similar platform to Quadriga where it was pretty simple and people could use it quite easily without getting confused. Mm-hmm. Whereas Binance kind of looks a little more intimidating. Not that it is difficult to use, but if you're new to this, right, like you're always skeptical of what button to push or where to go. So what platforms do you guys recommend for A, new users, and B, people who want to really get into it, other than Binance?
Well, I mean, we basically use...
Just use Binance.
Yeah, we use Binance. And then if you're trading Bitcoin derivatives, we use BitMEX. And sometimes for Bitcoin trading, we use Bitfinex or Bittrex. I mean, I don't really like Bittrex, like the
interface, the charts are a bit laggy.
The charts.
Yeah, it's really shitty. Like,
cool. Yeah.
No, it's ugly, and it's like, it's weird. There's a lot of like strange exchanges. Like, I don't know if you've gotten this deep yet, but like some of the Chinese and Korean exchanges, like Ether Delta, like Huobi, Coins Markets, like there's all these crazy exchanges and they look like they're from like the web design is from 1996 or something.
Jesus.
Like it's really strange, and they're really slow and weird. But I mean, just the major ones. I mean, the problem is that like all these exchanges weren't equipped resource-wise to handle the like sheer influx of volume that we experienced over the last few months. So that's why they all pretty much had to close down and upgrade their servers and stuff like that. I mean, even trading on BitMEX, it's like, I'm trying to buy or sell and I just can't get anything through. Which is it's part of the risk of getting involved with their emerging technology.
Yeah, I missed out. I'm not gonna lie. I missed out on the $3,000 sell. Like, I would have made $3,000 in like literally like 10 minutes of a pump. Of like, I think it was Bitcoin Cash or Bitcoin Gold. Like, they just skyrocketed around. It was when the Korean banks transferred from Bitcoin to Bitcoin Cash real quick, and then funneled the money back to Bitcoin, and there was that pump and dump that happened. And I'm like, buy, like, sell, and Quadriga was just like, nope, and it didn't go through. So yeah, sometimes you run into server issues, platforms go down, whatever. Platforms you wouldn't recommend. In my opinion, I hate Kraken. I hate the layout.
I never even use Kraken. I heard bad things about it.
Yeah, I wouldn't use Kraken. Coinbase, I hear, is just the fees are ridiculous, and you can only use your Visa card, I think, to purchase the Bitcoins or something.
I don't use Coinbase either.
Yeah. So I would avoid those two personally. Chris, do you have a?
We both started Poloniex. By the time we just kind of realized they weren't listing a lot of new currencies. So, for example, like right now, a few coins that are kind of really up and coming, like Icon, are not really available on the majority of exchanges, but Binance lists them. So
yeah, exactly. So it's kind of like this weird, like Chinese exchange. They like have these like Lambo giveaways, and it's just like kind of really unregulated and just shady as fuck. Yeah. It's like going to Macau or something. It reminds me of like a digital Macau.
That's funny. That's hilarious.
Speaking of you gave me shit for looking at my phone, but right now we're seeing like a big sell off. Yeah, big dump. Bitcoin is dumping right now. Yeah. Look at that. The market just dumped.
Snap of that.
The market just $40 billion since we started this podcast.
Really?
Yeah.
So that just goes to show to people that, like, damn.
Bitcoin's going down. Bitcoin's going down the toilet right now.
A lot of money. Yeah, a lot of people just lost a lot of money. But in my opinion, they're just going to make it back. Like, give it a few weeks. This is just volatility. I don't know about this drop, though. It's kind of just weird. But to be quite honest, I mean, it's dropping. It's not like it's dropping from 17, right? It went up to 14, back down. Maybe it'll bounce back. Who knows? But it's not just Bitcoin that's dropping. It's the entire market.
The whole market.
Everything. So, prediction as to what's causing this?
I don't know, man. Who knows? Who knows? Bitcoin's been doing some weird stuff lately. I mean, I don't know what the news is right now. Like, I could check Twitter, but
stay off your phone. We'll
it could be anything. Could be whales selling, but it might be a good time to buy BTC soon. Yeah.
So the beauty about when things go low is a beautiful time to buy.
Definitely.
Say anything. So it goes. I think that's what happens is you really play between. When the market's down, you just buy, and when the market goes up, you just sell and you wait for it to go back down again to buy again.
To subdue the psychological response, I know previously in other correction, I just kind of get this sick feeling in your stomach. Your position is trapped up here, and you know that you should try to buy the bottom, but sometimes you want to hedge. What if this continues falling to a bear market for a long time?
The craziest thing is that, in all this, in all of our, whatever, 2 years of experience in crypto, every panic sell, I regret every panic sell I ever made.
Oh, yeah, dude. Never, yeah.
Because right now, but even if I, held through bags that I bought literally at the top for months, to this day, I would be up 100x on all of them. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Because it just keeps going up.
Yeah, I tell people, I'm like, listen, if you buy a coin or a cryptocurrency, whether it be Bitcoin or whatever it is, and it drops below what you bought it at, I'm like, just leave it. No matter how long it takes, just leave it. I would rather lose every dollar I had in a crypto coin, let it just keep going down, and with the potential that it will at least reach back what it was at before, if not surpass it by a bit, then I can just sell it off and buy something else. It's less risky than having to just sell off low and you're going to lose money. That's how people get burned. That's how people lose money. And that's why you got to be patient. I tell every single person, the game is long, be patient. And the first thing that always happens, and it happened to me, Zahid, I'm sure it happened to you and it happened to you, Chris, is when you first get into this and you see how much money you've made over night, like in my sleep, I remember one of the nights I made like $800 sleeping. The next morning I woke up, it was just like, holy crap, that was quick. And you just get so into it. You're like in that screen and it goes down a margin and you're like freaking out, right? Do I sell? Do I buy? But once again, it's just that noob experience, being new into the platform and not realizing that, all the things that are at the top of the charts today in 12 hours are going to be at the bottom probably. And all these new coins are going to be at the top tomorrow. And that this is more of a long game that you need to look at. And I have other people who want to get in so fast because they're worried. They're like, I want to buy this Ven coin. It's at 31%. I need to buy it now. I'm like, dude, first of all, slow your roll. By the time you get even an account, by the time you get money in there, that thing's going to be 31% down and something else is going to be up. I just, I think people need to be patient from the point that they subscribe, insert money, and start playing with it, and not sell on the minutes. You know what I mean? Like, don't watch every minute, and just because it goes down a bit, sell. Like, watch it daily if you want, or if it's a long-term thing, don't watch it at all, and then you don't need to worry about it. Listen, people who are into Bitcoin for the long term, they don't care if it's down.
Honestly, like, despite all the trades I made, and the way I would have made the most money in this market is just by buying and holding and adding on every dip. So you don't want to get involved with the minute chart. That's how you get wrecked psychologically. And then also, like, it's crazy what the emotions of greed and fear can do. If you really want to learn something about yourself and your psychology, get involved with cryptocurrency.
Yes,
it'll really teach you about your emotions and how to manage them properly. Even if you manage to learn how to do it or not. It's just. There's a reason why greed is one of the 7. I mean, I'm not a religious person, but there's a reason why greed is one of the 7 deadly sins. I
had that conversation with one of the people today who I'm helping invest, and they literally want to just like throw at every coin, and I'm like, listen, you're just getting started. I'm like, have patience. You just got to have patience. You'll see. You're not going to see today because you're new. This is all crazy to you. First day or whatever, you see a 30%, 50% increases on some things. You're like, I should have bought that. That will come around every day. Every day that comes and goes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So they're in it for a few months, and it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter if I tell you and Zahid tells you and Chris tells you right now. It doesn't matter how prepared you are for it. You will have FOMO. You will run into a predicament where you're watching that screen all the time, where you're freaking out, and you got to just let it go, and you got to just let it be sort of a passive thing. And be patient. And if there's one thing I learned about myself, it is that I have become a more patient person as a result of trading cryptocurrency. Because I learned, like, don't jump the gun so quickly. Let things brew a bit. Just have patience with it. Because otherwise, once again, you're going to get burned. It's how you get burned.
It's crazy how, despite previous experiences, you still have to, like, fight the urge to act with your reptile brain,
Yeah.
That's essentially what it is. It's like some sort of like fight or flight response, at least in my assessment, that you just can't control, and you really have to sit down and, get a hold of yourself.
Yeah. And you go back to greed, and you're right. Like, the one thing that I put in my mind when you told me is like, don't be greedy. If you make 10% off a coin, and that coin you sold, for example, and it went up to 50%, don't worry. You still made a profit. Like, the whole point and the whole goal that I tell people to achieve is just as long as you make a profit, whether it be 10% and that coin goes up 100%, or it's a 25% return, that's great. Like, take it and be happy with that. Just don't get pissed off because you missed out on another 10% after you sold, or, whatever have you. Or you
the advice
and it comes down, and you're like, oh.
The advice that we give people is basically to
sell a portion of your
so basically you sell incrementally into strength, and also you set targets for yourself. So when the price action gets to a certain point, you sell at a level that you're comfortable with and that you won't regret, what you've done. I mean, I can't even count the number of times that I've sold into a gain and then just watched it go up another 50% afterwards, and been sick to my stomach with FOMO.
Yeah, it happens, and this is just thing people have to be prepared for. What are you going to say, Chris?
Not sure what I was going to say. Well, I think earlier, actually, I missed with Bitcoin Cash. I knew it was going to hit a wall at 3,000 resistance, but I couldn't get my money on the exchange fast enough, and I missed it, and now it's 2,500.
Yeah, you know what I missed out on? I missed out on Ethereum when it was 30 cents, and I was going to put 10K on it, and I couldn't. Oh, sorry, Ripple, my bad. Yeah, this was in July, right? July, 30 cents? Yeah.
I had Ripple at 1 cent.
Yeah, fuck you. I hate when you say that shit. Oh, yeah,
I didn't hold it.
Like a penny.
I didn't hold it, though. It's
Actually, the person that I told you about who sold their RSP stocks this week, she bought Ripple at 21 cents. And when it went up to $3, she asked me, she's like, should I keep it? Should I sell it? I'm like, sell it. Sell it now. And she ended up selling it at $3.30. So she made some really good bank. And then what happened right when I told her to sell it? It dropped. I didn't expect it to drop so much. I thought it would just drop down to like 3 or 290 or 280, but
it's like it went up like what 2,000% or something, and it doesn't even do anything.
Yeah, it's weird. Isn't the CEO or co-founder of Ripple the fifth? You said the fifth richest man now.
Well, he was when it was at $3.
Oh,
there's
based on his hold.
There's 2 people who own like 80% of Ripple supply.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. So it was based on his hold. No, it was based on all the business he does with nobody.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't really know that much about it, but
I thought he sold out. I thought that's why he got that title, is because he sold his holdings.
If he had sold his holdings, Ripple would have tanked to like 5 cents or something.
It did tank to friggin' $1 something, but still.
It's still 1,000 times higher than it was like 2 months ago.
Yeah. It's crazy though. It's just crazy. Like the whole fluctuation, I agree, is can be an issue, but to me, that's the part that you play off of. That's the part that you make the money off of. That's the banks. So if you don't want to be part of that, that's fine. If you think it's too volatile for your liking, that's fine too. But I just love people who, tell me they have investments elsewhere or they're saving up for something. One of my buddies said he was saving up for a car when I first got into Bitcoin, and I was like, dude, you got to buy this. It was at like $4,000. I kept telling them, I'm like, listen, once again, no benefit to me if you buy it, but this is what's happening, and you guys should strike while the iron's hot. And one of them said, oh, I'm too busy saving up for a car. And had he invested when I told him, he would have been able to buy 2 or 3 of those cars. So...
you know what the worst part is though, is that I understand the skepticism because
I was part of it.
The thing is like as an investor, and someone who's been involved with Bitcoin for a long time, I know that when things get pumped up, that they're eventually going to drop, right? Yeah. And so the hard thing about crypto is that almost every time you're buying into something is at the all-time high, right? So it's for example, last month in December, we basically had the biggest, alt run, even Bitcoin run in crypto history. I would say that the last couple of months have been pretty huge, with the global FOMO and a lot of people starting to get in and hear about it and start to take it more seriously and stuff. But I saw some of these alts, like Litecoin, Bitcoin Cash, Ethereum, the top 10, and then also all these smaller altcoins running up 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 100, whatever number percent. And me as an investor and always being a skeptic missed out on a lot of the gains because, I was too scared to get involved.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, like, friends of mine who don't have that much experience with crypto basically FOMO'd into these pumps and made a shitload of money because they didn't really have that previous hindsight,
And most
Sorry.
played all per month, well, more or less. Like after July, there was a big run, and then everything kind of bottomed out.
Yeah. I mean, it's.
I tell people, don't be afraid when it bottoms out. It's just, this is part of the market. This is part of the cycle. It's the healthy run. Like, things just go down, things go up. Like, but the worst thing you could do is buy into crypto and have it go down and take your money out and cut your losses. That's how you lose. In my opinion, you should just leave it. Like, the safe bet is to just always leave it, even if it drops. Do you guys agree, or do you guys disagree on that?
Well, the thing is the cardinal rule of investing is only invest the amount that you can afford to lose, right? Mm-hmm. So I listened to this one guy, I forget his I don't know how to pronounce his name. The brown guy who used to be involved with Facebook. He was like an early Facebook. He's like Chamath something. Okay. You know what I'm talking about?
No, but okay, I'll put a link to in the description below or whatever too. But I'll look him up.
Yeah, it's Chamath, like, anyways, he's like some like really, I guess he's like some sort of billionaire, like, investor guy, but he's heavily involved with crypto now. And I mean, he said, Chamath Palihapitiya. Yeah. Anyways, dude, listen to this guy talk, and I saw him on CNBC Fast Money recently. Oh, also crazy is I saw on Fast Money, they're showing people how to buy Ripple now. So they were actually like, first they went from being like, this is like a bubble and don't buy it, to then being like, oh, what is this? And then being like, okay, now we're going to show you how to buy. Like Poloniex was on CNBC.
Damn, that's crazy.
Yeah, but anyway, so he basically recommends that people invest their like 1% of their net worth in it. But I mean, this guy's a billionaire, so yeah, I don't even know what his 1% of his net worth is. But just invest what you're willing to lose, and realistically, this is like, a lot of people like to compare it to. They were comparing it to tulips or whatever. Like, that was cool for a bit, like the tulip bubble in fucking Amsterdam or whatever country.
Tulip bubble.
Have you not heard that?
No. I thought you were just using it as a reference.
No, you got to look it up. It's like, I don't even know. Do you know anything about it, Chris?
I don't know a lot about it.
Tulip mania.
It was a Dutch stock speculation in the 17th century that ran up the price of tulips, and then it exploded into a million pieces.
Yeah, so it was like two people went ape shit over tulips, and the price like went to like, it exploded, to like $2,000 a tulip or something, and then it just crashed. But so people love to use that analogy, but it's not like, this is a global fintech revolution. Like, it's not a fucking flower,
Yeah, it's not country based. Totally.
Well,
it's global. Like, well, you know what I mean. It's.
So the thing is that you basically research what cryptocurrency is, and like, if you look at the history of money and the fact that our fiat currency doesn't have any real value aside from what the government says it is, and you look at like articles like what's happening in Zimbabwe and how they've turned to cryptocurrency as a means of fair trade and as a store of value, you'll understand the importance that it has in our future society, and you make the decision for yourself. I mean, you're essentially investing in the future. It depends whether you're in it for a buck or you're in it because you want to be, this is like investing in Microsoft when it was in like a garage in like whatever, not the 80s.
Yeah, it's still in its infancy.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's like, I feel like 1 week in crypto feels like 1 month in regular life, like sometimes. Oh, yeah. I was hanging out with one of my brothers the other day, and we were going to sleep, and he was like, oh, what's going to happen in crypto tomorrow? And like, he was like, another crazy day, like, what's going to happen tomorrow? And it was, our day was literally like, 8 a.m. to like 11 p.m. of just like dealing with trades and clients and customers and, you know, this and that and helping people. So, and it's just, it's so crazy what happens every single day. So people with that being said, people lose track of the big picture of things. And I mean, we're not talking about if I buy Litecoin now or I buy, you know, Icon now, tomorrow, is it going to go parabolic and go 100x? Like, I'm talking like 2 to 5 years from now, you know, like this will be this is our .com bubble.
Yeah. The one thing that I always get from people is, well, if I buy a car with Bitcoin today, it's like $10,000, but then tomorrow Bitcoin goes up to $20,000 and I just lost like $10,000. And it's like, well, yeah, but do you say the same thing about your Canadian dollar? I mean, I know the difference is substantial compared to the US dollar, but let's put it this way. If you were to buy a car with 6,000 Canadian dollars and today that Canadian dollar is worth 69 cents, then tomorrow that Canadian dollar is worth 75 USD. Do you sit there and go, oh, I overpaid for the car? No, because you still spent 69 cents CAD. So it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you have 2 Bitcoin and you spend one on a car that day and the next day your Bitcoin's worth half in Canadian or US dollars. You still have one full Bitcoin.
Right, but the point that they're trying to make is that, like, first of all, you can't buy a car with Bitcoin. So.
I'm just like putting it.
No, but that's what makes.
Yeah,
right.
I'm putting out their point.
It's like it doesn't work, and also because that's a valid concern. That's the reason why. Like, did you see like those when Bitcoin was going crazy, Steam stopped accepting it because it was fluctuating so wildly that they couldn't accept it as a currency because it was too volatile. And the thing is that, like, what you said about the Canadian dollar, like, the Canadian dollar doesn't go up and down by 20 cents every day.
No, that's exactly, I said that, yeah. I was like, the only difference is that doesn't go up so much, right? So it's a difficult comparison. But to your point, you're not going to use Bitcoin, well, yet, maybe one day in the future you can, but you're not going to use Bitcoin to buy a vehicle, you know what I mean? And if you use one Bitcoin to buy a vehicle, you still have, and you had 2, you still have one other Bitcoin. It's just maybe the next day it's worth less in Canadian or US dollars, but it's still one full Bitcoin.
Right, but if you're able to actually buy stuff with Bitcoin, aside from a bit of a problem. Aside from on the darknet, then I understand your analogy. Like, it doesn't matter what worth. But you know, that's a valid concern. And the thing is that, like, as Bitcoin like becomes more widely adopted, it'll become more stable, and then, you know, people can actually start using it as a mode of exchange.
Totally. Which leads me to my next point, and some people's fear is, a lot of people talk about how people are trading Bitcoin, but nobody's actually using it. So nobody's like using it to buy stuff, and thus, if these trades aren't happening, what's going on with the value of this coin? Because, like, once people stop trading, and if they're not purchasing, then the coin is stale, right? Like, what's happening with the market there? So I hear that a lot too. I find that to be interesting. I see a bit of point to that, but I think trading Bitcoin right now would be an early trend into an adoption of the use of Bitcoin in the future, if that makes sense. Chris looks confused. Chris looks like he's got something to say.
No, it makes sense. But basically, yeah, it's correct. Because right now, what gives Bitcoin value is the fact that somebody else is willing to pay you for it. Mm-hmm. And that exchange is based on speculation. You know? So
speculation being that you think that potentially someone will buy this at this price if I'm choosing to sell or what have you.
No, because I that's not speculation, because I can see that in the order book. But I mean, it's based on speculation that it's going to become something.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So people say Bitcoin right now is overvalued at, you know, whatever it is at this exact moment, 13.3 thousand, which is what the price is right now. But
holy shit.
Yeah, I know, it really tanked. But
it's kind of coming back, whatever.
But you know, maybe it is overvalued. You know what I mean? Maybe it should be 10K. Maybe it should be 9K. Either way, I'm not bothered because, I'm in it for the long run, and I believe that, it's going to become part of our society. So, that's just how I look at it.
Okay, what's your predictions for Bitcoin in the next year? And don't say I don't know. I knew you were going to say. Because the truth is we don't know. Anything can happen. That's what we for sure know.
Listen,
right?
if Bitcoin stayed at between 10 and 15K for the next year, I would be okay with that. Mm-hmm. I'm a bull long term, but I understand that markets have cycles, and the cryptocurrency market is going to have a cycle just like every other market.
Definitely.
And it's only a matter of time.
Yeah. I predict and hope that in the next year it goes back up. It at least within the next year reaches its all-time high, previous all-time high. I wouldn't doubt that it surpasses that. It just, as you said, it really depends on how long it goes kind of sideways for. That's the only thing. But just like you, I'm not concerned. I would buy Bitcoin now. I would know that it would go up. I really have strong faith in that. But yeah, Chris, what do you think? What's going to happen with Bitcoin this year?
Well, I think I was looking at the chart for the September correction, because actually the price recovery did take quite a while, if I remember, 2 to 3 weeks after.
Is that a long time?
Well, in relative terms, when you look at what happened in November and December, that price climb was very steep, very fast.
Yeah.
But the thing now is that the market share of Bitcoin has declined from 60-something% dominance to, I can't remember, the last time we checked, it was 33%. So I think it's a new story with the kind of main altcoins. And as I say, the more nationalist kind of projects like Icon in Korea and Neo in China. So I think those ones and the ecosystems that they're building are going to be the main growers. I feel like their relative stability in Bitcoin price would be my prediction for the next 6 months.
Yeah, I mean, if Bitcoin just is the price is stable and it gives them room for more of these altcoins to grow, I'm good with that too. You know what I mean? Long term bull, and if the price is going up or down, we can use it to make money either way. So that's basically what we're looking at.
Yeah, I'm going to go back to the user aspect real quick, the height and the people who are now subscribing, in the mainstream, quote unquote. Takes me back to 6 months ago, as I was telling you, I would get messages, just random messages. Oh, you're crazy for buying into Bitcoin or whatever. And 3 weeks, 4 weeks later, I'm not kidding you, I have so many emails and messages from those very same people calling me crazy or being skeptical, asking, yo, how do I buy a Bitcoin? So if these people who were skeptics 6 months ago are now asking me how to buy a Bitcoin, that just shows that, and I was one of those skeptics, right? When I first heard about Bitcoin, I'm like, I don't get this shit. Now I'm fully invested in it. They're fully invested in it. And I even get thank yous. I get holy crap, dude. Thank you, for showing me the light or whatever it may be. And yeah, that's not to say that everybody will win off Bitcoin or everybody should essentially invest in it, but I think it's a wise move. Obviously, we've all done somewhat well or substantially well or whatever it may be.
Actually, I've lost everything, so.
The only thing you lost was your soul, Zahid.
Yeah.
That's why you're dark and brooding.
That's not an understatement.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
Not at all. That's okay. Okay, so real quick, let's each give one coin or 2 coins that you would recommend for new users for the long term if they were to buy an altcoin or cryptocurrency. What would you tell them? I'm going to go first. My monthly pick is Icon, as you mentioned before, so ICX. I think it's a good monthly choice. I think if you buy it now and sell it sometime during the month at a high, you're going to do well there. My long-term altcoin is ETHOS. I think that for the long term is going to do super well. I've heard predictions of it going 10 times, upwards of 50 times what it's at. So those are my two predictions. And of course, another long-term I would put back into Bitcoin or Ether because of the fork that's happening this month. What are your thoughts, Chris?
Well, one of my kind of core holdings for a while has been Bitcoin Cash. Mm-hmm. Because, I don't know, if you look at the chart, basically it's playing off of like uncertainty regarding Bitcoin. And I think Roger Ver, the guy running Bitcoin Cash, as much as he is, I don't know, kind of a problematic personality, but I think he has the drive to kind of market the currency as something. And I think you can see the price actually from like $300 in September to now it's sitting around 2,600. Yeah. So it's consolidating pretty nicely, I would say.
Yeah.
But it's a bit boring compared to, these 10 times calls. But as a stable core holding for a new person, I think that's a good bet.
Awesome. Do you have any short-term picks?
I like ETHLend and also Icon like you. Mm-hmm. It's kind of in the run-up to the January 31st news. So
yeah, that's exactly why I said it was for the month. How about you, Zahid? What do you got?
Well, obviously Bitcoin, and I'm pretty bullish on Icon too. I've been reading about the technology and also the fact that it's like the Korean Ethereum. So I'm pretty bullish on that, and then also Neo for this year. Okay. With all the ICOs and stuff that are coming out on the Neo platform, and Neo's, it looks like it might really be starting to take off soon. So yeah, we'll see what happens.
All right, cool. So we have Neo for the long term, ETHOS for the long term, Bitcoin for long term, Bitcoin Cash for long term, Icon for your short term, Lend for short term. You said?
Medium term, I would say. I'm not convinced either way yet, but I think it has a lot of room to grow.
Okay, cool. Now, once again, disclaimer, if you buy these coins and you lose, not our problem. We're just telling you what we think, which ones are going to go up for the short term, long term. Hopefully that helps you out. Hopefully we've helped out a lot of people learn at least a bit of less about, I guess, the tech savvy side of cryptocurrency and more about what happens when you're actually in the game of crypto. Do you guys have anything else you guys want to mention? Or should we wrap this up or what?
That's it, man. It'll be an ongoing conversation.
Yeah, so here's what I want to do, though. I want to come back in 6 months or a year and see where we're at, what's going on again. Let's do this over again. We'll either bring in Richard as well, who's another friend of ours who does crypto mining, and potentially AJ, who I've mentioned before, who's very involved in ICO and P2P, which is kind of interesting because to me and you, that's more nah, stay away. But he's done really well in it, so I'd really like to get his eyes on it. So you guys down to do this again in 6 months' time, 1 year's time? See what happens.
We can do it sooner than that, man.
All right, cool. We will. All right, thank you both for doing this. Really appreciate it. For the people watching, please subscribe, share, comment. I'd really, really love to get you as a subscriber. If you subscribe, you will be entered as one of my first 100 to win one copy of Humans of New York. And there's some more prizes coming, some of them, one of which is on the shelf behind me. But yeah, I'll be presenting those in my other videos as we go. Thank you so much for watching the podcast. This is it. Peace out.
Bye.
Thank you. And good night.